Off the Grid is probably one of the most interesting projects I've played over the last few years, because if they manage to get this right by the time it leaves early access, I genuinely think this could be one of the BR games that bullies its way into the conversation of things like Fortnite, Apex Legends, and Call of Duty Warzone. The only way I can describe this game is if Warzone and Apex Legends had a baby and that baby was a third-person shooter and was set in a weird alternate cyberpunk universe. And whilst that all sounds kinda confusing, there is a lot to love about what Off the Grid is doing, and lots of areas where, with a bit of polish and a bit of improvement, this could be a very serious contender in the Battle Royale space. Off the Grid is offering a very interesting take on the Battle Royale genre off the rip. It's offering a PvP element and a PvE element, and the PvE element offers a 60-hour narrative campaign with various missions around the map. But the game fundamentally at its core features everything you'd want from a traditional BR at this point in time. A looting system, a rarity system, a plating system and health system, and some abilities scattered in between. But the unique selling point of Off the Grid is just the fluidity and fun of the gameplay. The movement systems in this game are phenomenal, traversing around the map is a heap of fun, and you don't need to be an expert in how to do it. It's very simplistic, the gliding motions, the jetpack motions, and all of the abilities that are offered to you as a character feel great. And all of this is complemented together by a cybernetic system which forms the basis of this battle royale. In this BR, not only do you loot weapons and general equipment like plates, but you loot critical abilities in the form of cybernetics. Each one of your arms is capable of an ability. It could be a grappling hook, it could be a cloaking ability, it could be firing a rocket or firing a flammable grenade, and your legs are also capable of different abilities, like the ability to launch into the air and then pound into an opponent, or the ability to launch into a jump pack style jump and gather some distance. The legs have their own abilities, including a sprint that you can unlock if you decide to take that specific set of cybernetics, and all of these are lootable throughout the entire map. So when you wipe an opponent, you can quite literally steal their legs and steal their arms if you feel they're more beneficial. And you can swap out these things on the fly in the middle of a game, so if at one point it seems really great to have legs that make you move quick, and at another point it feels really great to have legs that allow you to deploy a mortar barrage, that is entirely an option available to you. So not only do you have this very cool traversal system, you have a metagame system regarding the cybernetics that you have available to your disposal that have effectively different character roles. You could have a more heavy character role that has fire grenades, mortars in his legs, and maybe something like a slowdown sludge in his other arm, creating a heavy package that doesn't have the same maneuverability as the jumping legs or the sprinting legs, but is a more reliable person to go to in combat situations. The game also has an interior economy whenever you're in the BR game where you loot cash, and that cash can then be spent to not only buy back friendly teammates who are wiped from the game, but can also be spent to buy yourself a loadout that you predestinedly fit together before you go in. And a really nice touch is that each one of the loadout assets that you add to your overall loadout costs money in the game. So for example, I could put an AR and an SMG in, and that would only cost maybe $2,000 in the BR. But if I add a bunch of cybernetics on top of that and I add the best equipment I can find, maybe that loadout then starts costing $4,000 or $5,000. So you can actually spec different tiers of loadout based on the amount of money you have available that you've looted in-game. When you combine the cybernetics, the movement system, and the gunplay of the game, which, although lacking in some places and does need to have a little bit of polish in places, you get this very satisfying gameplay loop of really great movement, really solid outplayability, the ability to combine different weapons and different pieces of equipment and cybernetics together to create moments that I feel are very unique to this game. The map is super intricate with lots of very obvious and memorable points of interest that allow you to glide in between different floors, feature multiple zip lines, and just have tons of options for maneuverability and outplayability when you're engaging a different squad. And the map so far, from what I've played, has felt genuinely phenomenal. Like, I do think this is a very memorable map that we're seeing in the game. I think the zone is also very threatening and forces people to make lots of critical decisions. Everything I think I'd want from good fundamentals of a BR is in this game, including an anti-cheat, straight from the get-go, which is nice to see. The gunplay feels like a slightly faster version of Apex Legends. Apex Legends' time to kill, I feel, is extremely long. Off the Grid is definitely quicker than Apex Legends, not nearly as long, but is a longer time to kill. So you can actually react to an opponent firing on you. You can react and maneuver out of a situation. And the traversability options in the game especially give you lots of ways to escape from a gunfight as a group. I played this thing for nearly 7 or 8 hours today, and honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that I had other things to do, I probably wouldn't have put it down. The core gameplay loop is really satisfying, and the looting system in terms of finding stuff is satisfying. The contracts themselves feel very enjoyable, whether that's a bounty contract or finding hexes in games, which we'll touch on a little bit more later. It just feels like there's a lot to do in this BR beyond just fighting your opponents. And when you do fight those opponents, the outplayability and the skill gap is very much there, but it isn't overwhelmingly there. This isn't the kind of game where if you've never played a BR before, or if you're not hugely fond of movement shooters, you would feel out of touch with the system. There are different ways that you could spec your character to fit your playstyle, maybe with a little less maneuverability, a bit more of a tanky build, that would suit what you're looking for. One of the reasons I love Call of Duty Warzone is because when you have these really interesting fights between different squads, you get into this kind of motion that I like to call a flow state, where you're making all of these split-second decisions and micro decisions around your playstyle, the equipment you have, how you're going to use it, where you're going to rotate to, how you're going to maneuver it, and it creates this really satisfying loop where all of those decisions are either punished or rewarded based on what you do. And I feel that in Off the Grid already. Within just a few hours, I was combining different cybernetics to produce different outcomes and trying different weapons to suit different playstyles, and it was all just coming together. There are some very unique things in here as well. For example, certain high caliber weapons have the ability to shoot off an opponent's cybernetic. So you can shoot off an opponent's arm and they will drop the weapon they're holding and lose that ability until they reclaim their arm. Or if you take full damage because you forget to use your jetpack on landing, you lose your legs temporarily and have to crawl around in the game. It also has a fully fledged firing range that allows you to see how the cybernetics work, how you can test all of them out in terms of maneuverability, and see how you can actually shoot off different opponents' cybernetics to limit their gameplay, and this is super effective for things like snipers and shotguns. The overarching package in Off the Grid, I feel, has the core gameplay loop to be as successful as Warzone and as successful as Apex Legends, so long as certain things go its way, because this is early access and there are some things that we have to talk about. Now, there are some core gameplay design stuffs that I feel need to be touched on. For example, damage feedback isn't particularly good in the game and it's hard to identify when you're taking lots of damage versus very little damage. And there are some things like backpacks and plates looking vaguely similar, but from a gameplay design perspective, there isn't too much I'm worried about here. Audio could maybe be slightly better, but generally speaking, the gunplay's fun, the gameplay loop is fun, the balancing so far feels pretty on par. Like, from a top-down perspective, in terms of a game package, the early access package looks really solid. But from a structural perspective, in terms of what the game is offering and how it's trying to do it, there are some things that need work. The first and foremost of this is 100% the performance of this game. I have a 4090 and a 13900K, and I am only getting around 100 frames at 1440p. And this is because this game is a UE5 game and fairly unoptimized. It's not using enough of my CPU, and it seems to be doing certain UE5 things like having permanently on ray tracing that just don't make sense for a game like a Battle Royale. Now, undoubtedly, I feel as though optimization is one of those things that as a UE5 title, this game will greatly improve on within a matter of months. But it is critical that we're talking 200 plus frames for the system I'm using, so that people on lower end systems can generally enjoy this game. A BR, especially a free-to-play one like this one, will not be successful if it can't run on a toaster. And right now, it can't run on things like 3060s, and that is not a good sign for it. It's also quite choppy on console too. Whilst it's definitely a bit more stable in the console area, it could be better. Right now, this game needs like 60 to 70% bumps in terms of performance improvement to not only offer a really solid PC experience, but make sure the console players are seeing a 120 frames option across the board. Balancing in this game is also something I feel is going to be critically key, and this applies more so when thinking about how the game's unlock system works. Now, at the moment, you can dive into this game 100% free to play, and you can go into the game and loot every single item you need, including random loadouts that are pre-assigned that you can just take. And almost all of these loadouts will have good items in them that are effective and combat effective in game. But the unlock system in this game relies on a system of hexes. And hexes are these randomly extractable blueprints that you can extract in the game whilst on the actual map itself, or at the end of the game if you win a round. So you either protect an extraction station for I believe about 2 minutes, or you win the game and any hexes that you're carrying are taken out with you. When you unlock a hex using the game's in-game currency that you earn through each match, you can get cosmetic items, you can get variants of your weapons of different rarity, and you can apply those immediately into your loadout. And within about 6 hours of not paying a single penny into this game, I've managed to get one fully fledged loadout that I'm very happy with highly effective purple weapons. But I don't think weapon variants in terms of rarity should really be featured in the unlock system at all. I just think every weapon rarity should be available in the game if you find it, but in terms of loadouts, it should just be a fixed maximum of maybe blue rarity. As far as I can tell, there aren't really dramatic differences between different rarities of weapons in the game. White weapons, for example, kill seemingly just as fast as a purple weapon, but very small things like having an optic attachment or maybe having a larger magazine do seem to come into play. Now, the hex system is entirely random. You do get more general currency to unlock these hexes, and you earn more of the in-game currency if you pay $9.99 a month. So you can kind of think of the free-to-play model as something like a War Thunder membership to some extent, where there's a base grind for most people that I don't think is all that painful based on my initial impressions, and then a faster grind if you're somebody who wants to commit to generally playing the game. But just making sure that the in-game balancing system isn't too heavily reliant on this unlock system of hexes and the in-game economy that is available in the game is going to be really critically key. And this ties into my next thing, which is a big question about how this game is going to monetize. Now, this game is free to play on all platforms, and you can pay a subscription fee of £10 a month to unlock more in-game currency. All of the battle passes for the game are included in that £10 monthly fee, which do unlock you various cosmetics in the game. And at the moment, I believe there's about 6 or 7 different trees of cosmetics, about 6 or 7 micro battle passes, if you will, that are included in this fee. And that's a pretty good deal. I'd say Apex Legends and things like Warzone are in a fairly comparable state. But this does provide you more of the in-game currency. I think you earn 5 times as much more in-game currency with the monthly membership over not having it. But critically, having this membership allows you to also sell items onto the marketplace in a Tarkov-style system. Now, if you don't have the membership, you can buy items from the marketplace using your in-game currency to apply to preset loadouts. And whilst these loadouts aren't 100% necessary in the gameplay loop, they do come in handy. And as I mentioned, at this present moment in time, you are capable of putting higher rarity loadout weapons into your loadout, but they do cost more in-game money. So for example, if I unlock a purple variant SMG as part of a hex, and then include it in my loadout in-game that I get from $4,000 that I've looted on the ground, that would cost more than a blue SMG or a green SMG. So there is still a balancing element that's occurring to the game here. So you might be thinking, in the grand scheme of things, that it actually sounds pretty cool. You can buy and sell cosmetics for your characters, you can sell different rarity weapons that you happen to unlock through extracting these hexes, and that will give you more in-game currency to do more things with. Customize your characters, change your loadouts, whatever it so happens to be. And that all sounds phenomenal, because all of this is occurring without pretty much any real-world money besides a short monthly subscription, which is very similar to what you're seeing in games like War Thunder, so on and so forth. And £9.99 a month for something that not only gives you a slightly faster XP gain, but also gives you access to the various Battle Pass cosmetics, in my view, isn't a bad deal in the current climate of things, and actually is a substantially better deal than games like Warzone that charge you 30 odd pounds for something like Black Cell. But where all of this gets muddied is the fact that Off the Grid is quote-unquote not an NFT game, but has an optional NFT element. Now, I have no issue with cryptocurrency integrating into games depending on how it's implemented. Right now, you can buy and sell skins on the Steam Marketplace for Dota, for CS, you can buy and sell ships on things like EVE Online and Star Citizen, and that is just a standard practice. And these happen inside marketplaces in the game where real-world currency is exchanging hands between people for an in-game item. And based on the interviews that Off the Grid has offered so far, the general consensus is that the idea is that the player should be able to make profit from items that they happen to get in-game. So very similar, if you will, to something like Counter-Strike, where you can buy and sell skins, stat trackers, rare items, and you can actually make money off of those things. In my personal view, there is no difference between you doing that on a marketplace or a blockchain where the payment transactions are authorized. They're just two separate ways of ultimately achieving the same thing. And I should say, according to the developers, and from what I have played so far, you don't have to go anywhere near this stuff, and it isn't even implemented really into the game at the moment. And they've tried to make it painstakingly clear through a number of different posts online and their own FAQ page that this is entirely optional. You do not have to buy and sell skins if you so want to. But right now, until we actually see the optional NFT and blockchain element come into this game, we have no idea how this monetization system is going to work. So, for example, you can earn this in-game currency at faster rates with this monthly subscription, or just earn it without paying anything at all, and you can use that to put things into your loadouts, so on and so forth. And effectively, this could go one of two ways. Either Off the Grid is going to recognize that they have a really popular game on their hands, and that this is only ever going to apply to very cosmetic things, stat trackers, skins, unique weapon charms, maybe even weapon tracers, different colors, different so on and so forth. Every customization option you could think of for guns under the sun. And that would just simply be a marketplace to buy and sell those things, with an integration into blockchain and NFTs, meaning that you can exchange real-world money for cryptocurrency that is interacting with the game in real time. And that is why this game is on the Epic Games Store and not on Steam, because Steam games do not allow any kind of crypto economy games into their library, which kind of makes sense considering Steam tends to profit from things like CS and Dota. The second route, and this is definitely the more challenging one, is that it could end up being something like FIFA Ultimate Team. In FIFA Ultimate Team, the people who spend more money unlock more cards, they use those cards in-game, those cards are better performing than other people's cards, and therefore it's effectively a pay-to-win structure. Now, we don't know which way the cookie's going to crumble with Off the Grid until this stuff is implemented. It could just be that it is going to be fully cosmetic, it could just be that it is going to be fully things like stat trackers, tracers, voice lines, whatever it is that they're so interested in selling on a blockchain market that they feel would work for players. But it could also be that there are going to be rarer weapons and rarer loot weapons and rarer variants of those weapons that end up being more higher performant. And then those weapons are going to be sold for the same in-game currency, which would be tied to a crypto. Meaning that you would effectively get a hyper-aggressive market where better performing items end up being worth more money in real life. And people with more real money in real life could effectively get a full pay-to-win loadout. Granted, there are some balancing assets in terms of how these rarities of variants work in game, and it isn't just as cut and dry as pay more money, get better things. But until we see this happen in the game, and until we see the NFT and crypto system fully implemented, it's hard to say which way the coin is going to fall. Off the Grid is adamant that this is going to be something that's optional and won't be pay to win, and that it's something that is just going to be a part of the game that if you want to, you can completely ignore. But ultimately, games that are made for NFT and cryptocurrencies generally are looking to make money. So at the very best end of the spectrum, this just could be a CS-style market or Dota 2-style market that's just tied into a cryptocurrency that allows players who play for a large number of times and unlock various different hexes that they extract from games to potentially make some good cash. And I'm not against that system. At the moment, you can spend shit tons of money in games like Warzone and FIFA and War Thunder and all these other games, and you'll never see a dime of that back. It is not profitable. Games like Star Citizen, EVE Online, and CS at the bare minimum potentially give you the opportunity to sell some of that stuff. But at the very worst of things, this could end up being effectively FIFA Ultimate Team, but for video games, for first-person shooters in particular, or third-person shooters in this case, where higher rarity items that are more preferable or happen to be more meta end up selling for more real-world money, and you effectively create an economy that is ultimately ending up being pay-to-win with extra steps. At this moment in time, there is just no way of saying. It's one of those things where it could fall either side of the coin, and we just have to see how things go. The developers and the pages and the FAQ pages seem fairly adamant that that is not going to be the case and it won't impact the game, But there's also conflicting reports and interviews from the games company themselves and the guys who are making this crypto game that ultimately they feel they can make a successful fiscal model. And it really depends how they view that. If they view it as we have a successful game that can be really successful and we don't need to do anything stupid or pay to win with it, then this game could fly off the shelves. You would have a game that's effectively a really solid battle royale with a CS2 style skin system that's tied into a cryptocurrency that could do absolutely laps in the game industry. Or you could have this is FIFA Ultimate Team but for third person shooters, various pay to win elements, and the game will fall flat on its face because ultimately people aren't going to play a pay to win battle royale that's against pretty much anybody's natural instinct. So at the moment, it's just something to keep an eye on. I actually genuinely believe that this game, just from the core elements of what it has so far, has so much potential in the BR space. And I really hope that they view it as this is going to be a successful game and back the developers who have made this game and say, well, actually, no, we will offer stat trackers, skins, weapon tracers, and things that are unique items that can be sold uniquely. It would be really cool if there were variants of skins that are like a 1 in a million, and therefore it's worth lots of cash in a very similar vein to how it works in CS. And I am absolutely not against any system that allows players to profit off of the games that they play. But in every single video game, whether it's FIFA Ultimate Team, or the old Call of Duty Black Ops games, or anything, EVE Online, Star Citizen, wherever it so happens to be, the line between something being profitable and fun for players where they could potentially make cash, or just downright pay to win, is a very thin line. And the side of the line that they fall on is going to be really important here. Before we even get to any of that stuff, they do need to fix basic things like performance. But overall, I'm really impressed with Off the Grid. This game has surprised me in ways that I wasn't anticipating, and whilst there are things that could be better about it, like damage feedback, performance, and generally weapon balancing and just keeping on top of that, this game has been the most fun I've had in a BR since the original Warzone. And I think that's a very bold statement. Let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one.